In data science, whenever we are working on any sort of projects or when we are learning data science as a new, it is very important for us to work on stats as well. What are stats? Statistics. If I would like to specifically elaborate it, statistics. So we have to work on statistics as well, where multiple mathematical calculations will come into the picture, such as variance, mean, median, mode, coefficient, variation, standard deviation. So there are many things those comes into the picture as part of statistics in data science. So why are all these used? In order to do some prediction, in order to get some business insights of the future, or in order to get the business trends of future, in order to see how the sales will happen in the next coming days or coming weeks or coming month. So in order to give some right suggestion to the client to where is the problem and what is the possible solution, we have to go with the mathematical way. So for all these things, we will have to learn many formulas, we have to do some mathematical calculations as well. So we know that we use generally the mean for average, median, mode, we use all these things. But there is something called as deviation in data science or in mathematics that we have to know. Hi, I am M. Asif Hussain from KnowHow Academy. Today in this video, we are going to learn and understand what is the standard deviation and coefficient of variation. What are the formulas of population variance and sample variance with one practical example. So by the end of this video, you could able to get what is the difference between variance and standard deviation, what are the formulas for population variance and sample variance, what is the formula for coefficient of variation, how to do some small calculations using it. So watch till that. My dear viewers, in general what do? We generally go and use something called as variance to do some calculations or some measurements. So the point here is that now the variance is a little bit hard, it's a little bit difficult in order to do some sort of measurements. So the easiest way or the another way, if not variance, what we generally do is that we just do the square root and calculate it. That's where we call it as a standard deviation. Okay, so under this one, if I would like to just open it up here, so under this variance, okay, when I'm talking about variance, under this variance we have two types, as we generally know that we have population variance. Okay, we have population variance. So under this again population variance, okay, which is one of the types of the variance, again we have something called as sample variance. Okay, we have these two types of variances. One, we have population variance and sample variance. Now we have to understand in the same way the formulas. We have to understand in the same way the formulas for population standard deviation and sample standard deviation. So if I would like to just write it here, population standard deviation and a sample standard deviation. So we have to understand the formulas for these two as well. So in order to work on any sort of calculations or the formulas or any sort of data set, we have to use these formulas. So what is the formula for population standard deviation? We generally denote with sigma equal to square root of sigma square. Okay, so in the same way standard deviation also we denote with s equal to square root of s square. Okay, this is the general way that we generally denote the population standard deviation and this sample standard deviation. So apart from these two, we have something called as coefficient of variation. Okay, I'm generally writing it here, coefficient of variation, which we generally denote it with the CV. Okay, we generally denote it with the CV here. Okay, so CV. So it is equal to, what is the formula of coefficient of variation? It is very easy formula that we are going to see it. The coefficient of variation equal to standard deviation that we are just seen, the standard deviation divided by the mean, this is the formula. So where standard deviation is relative to the mean, if I would generally talk in the general terminology, standard deviation is relative to the mean. That's where is the coefficient of variation. So here what we have to do is that, for example, if I would like to just calculate, okay, if I would like to just calculate the population formula. The population formula, here I am going to consider for the same in the terms of coefficient of variation, then I'll go with CV equal to sigma by mu. Okay, this is what we go with the population formula. And the same thing, if I would like to go with the sample formula, here I will go with CV bar equal to S by X bar. S by X bar. So this is the formula for sample variance and this is the formula for population variance. Okay, so whenever we are trying to see, we have to note that the standard deviation is the common measure that we consider it for variability for a single data set if we have. For a single data set if we have. So for example, let me just show you with one small example. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to consider a small data set. Okay, let me show you the data set by just considering a small Excel data that I would like to show it to you. So in this data set, you please understand what are the different scenarios that I have considered and how are we going to work on it. Let's consider that I have the business of sandwiches. Okay, I am having a business of sandwiches and I am selling some sandwiches in 10 different locations. So what is the sales of 10 different locations that I would like to show it? Then let me consider I have the sandwich business in 2 different countries. Okay, one in India and another one is in US. So if it is in India, or if I consider it in INR, the currency of India, so let us consider it as 1, 2, 3, 4, or if I would like to consider that no, it's 3 in the both the cases, then I'll go with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then 11. Okay, so this is in India. The same thing if I would like to consider it in US dollars. Okay, the same if I would like to consider it in US dollars, the US currency, then I'll go with $18, then I'll go with $37, then I'll go with $56, then I'll go with $56 again, I'll go with $94, then I'll go with $112, then I'll go with $131, then I'll go with $150, then I'll go with $169, then I'll go with $200. Okay, or 206 or 207 or whatever it may be. It's up to you, whatever the value you would like to consider. This is for the purpose of just to show you how we have to use the formulas in order to work on the standard population formula or a sample formula. So when we have such a kind of data set, okay, we have such a kind of data set, we have to make sure that, see this one, I have starting from 1 to 10. Let us consider my interval where my n, I would like to consider n here, n equal to 10. Okay, this is the interval. Okay, this is the interval. So now when n equal to 10, then what I have to do? What is the first step that we have to consider? Okay, then we have to find out what is our sample. What is our sample or population variance? Okay, that we have to consider. Sample or population. Okay, so after we're done with this, then we need to find out what is the mean and we have to find out the sample variance. Okay, sample variance. First we should understand whether this comes under the sample variance category or this comes under the population variance category. After finding out that, we have to find out mean, then we'll go with the sample variance. So after we find out the sample variance, then we have to find out the sample standard deviation. Sample standard deviation. So let's find out one by one. So if I would like to consider, let's consider that I would like to find out the mean for this one, and the mean for let us consider if it is for INR business, okay, which is for India, and if it is for US dollar. So what will be the mean? So if we find out the mean for this one, so what will be there? The answer for this one will be 5.50, and for this one it will be 103. Okay, so I'm here, it is considering in the rupees perspective, here I am considering it in the dollars perspective. Okay, so now we have done with the mean. Now if I would like to find out the sample variance, so let me just write it as a SV here. The sample variance, if I would like to consider, here I will go with 10.72, where I will go with square here, rupees square. Okay, I'm just denoting it like this, square. Then I'll go with 3793 square. Okay, whatever it might be the value, if I would like to consider. And in the same way, if I would like to find out the sample standard deviation, I'm just writing it with SSD. The sample standard deviation here, if you would like to consider, it will be 3.27, and it will be 61 here. And if the same thing, if I would like to find out sample coefficient of variation, variance, if I would like to consider, it will be 0.60, and the same thing, it will be 0.60. Okay, so if you are just getting confused how we have to calculate the mean and all, it's very simple. If I would like to just add all these things and divide by 2, we'll get the formula. So let's consider, I'll just show you here, equal to sum of, I'm just considering all these values, okay, all these values, and I'm dividing it by what is the number of intervals that we have is 10, where we'll get 5.5. okay, the same way for this one also, if I would like to consider equal to sum of, so I'm just considering all these values here, and I am just dividing it by 10, which is my number of intervals that I have it. I'm just calculating it, it's 102.9, the round figure I have considered it as 103. Okay, so this is how you calculate the mean, and the formulas that we have seen it here for the population variance and sample formula. Based upon this perspective with the coefficient of variation as well, we have to find out sample variance, sample standard deviation, sample coefficient of variation formulas as well. So here when we are trying to see, we are representing it with a square here, we are representing it with a square. So sample variance is rupees square, and here also we have it as a dollar square. So please be very careful that whenever we are representing the sample variance, we have to mention it in the square perspective. We have to represent the square in the units as well as the values here as well. Okay, so as you all know that we have represented this sample variance in the terms of square root. The reason is that if I come back here and if I just show you, let's see what is the formula. See this one, sample variance, we are denoting it with square root of sigma square, and the sample again we are representing it s equal to square root of s square. So that's the reason that we are representing the values in the square basis and as well as the units as well. So now if we carefully observe, my dear viewers, so as you can see that the sample coefficient of variance that we have considered, it is same, 0.6 for Indian rupees also, 0.6 for US dollars also. So two data sets have same variability. Okay, two data sets have same variability. So what can you predict? Okay, what can you predict with this kind of examples, or that we have to make sure that we cannot depend only on a mean, we cannot depend only on a sample variance. We have to find out 2 or 3 different formulas wherever exactly the business is causing a loss or causing a profit. So where we have to focus on what particular duration, date, time, so how much business we have to get developed. So there are multiple aspects that we can consider as part of improvement in the business perspective. So my dear viewers, in this video we have learned what is a standard deviation, what are the formulas of standard deviation, what is coefficient of variance, and we have seen the formula and as well as the example for coefficient of variation. Thank you for choosing KnowHow Academy as your source for IT knowledge. We are always here to help you to navigate the tech world. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. It's been a pleasure sharing this information with you. Stay curious and keep learning.